My wife said she wanted a divorce. No yelling, no tears, just, if you want answers, talk to my lawyer. At first, I thought we were just tired, busy. Then her old tablet dinged on the counter. One name showed up, Dylan. Miss last night already. That dress was unfair. I opened the tablet. No passcode. I saw a hidden account. Photos from hotels, a lake cabin, cute nicknames. The dates matched her work retreats. That's when I finally understood what I was looking at. She came home. I asked one question. She didn't deny anything. She called me boring and set a thin black folder on the table. Our prenup. If you want answers, she said, talk to my lawyer. So I did, a small diner off Michigan Avenue. Black coffee, a Formica table. The lawyer slid into the booth across from me. I put a plain envelope between us. Screenshots, receipts, the timeline, and one sentence from that prenup that only matters if someone cheats. The lawyer read it and stopped smiling. If you've ever wondered what happens next, keep listening. It started with her eyes. She stopped seeing me. Not the dramatic kind of, I hate you, just that quiet glaze people get when they're already somewhere else. Kisses landed like calendar reminders. Her laugh came late, like it needed to buffer. I tried to joke about it, asked if our Wi-Fi was slow, but she smiled past me and reached for her phone. If you've ever been married long enough to read the room by heartbeat, you know that shift, the way a dinner table turns into a stage and you're the extra. I told myself not to be dramatic. People change, seasons turn, marriages drift and drift back. Still, the question stuck. When did we stop making eye contact and start making appointments? I watched her scroll, watched the glow on her face, watched my own reflection fade in the screen. I went to bed early, hoping sleep would reset the day. It didn't. The silence had momentum now. The alarms were small at first. Lipstick that didn't match the office dress code. A new perfume that arrived with no bottle on the sink. Girls' nights that ended with ride shares she couldn't name in the morning. At breakfast, she'd stir coffee and forget to drink it. Thin half moons of cold in every cup. Our hallway turned into a tarmac. Rolling suitcase, quick kiss. Don't wait up. If you're over 30, you learn to pay attention to routines. They tell the truth long before people do. I checked the thermostat, fixed the squeak in the screen door, cleaned the lint trap. Every married man's way of begging the universe to give him a simple problem. But the house didn't need me. The story did. When she texted, running late, don't wait, I pretended that meant we were fine. Later that night, the garage was so quiet I could hear coolant ticking in an old Ford. That's how I knew I wasn't overthinking. Busy was our new language. She was at work, on a retreat, unwinding with the team. I used to get photos of sunsets and appetizers. Now I got calendar invites and let's rain check. It's funny how grown-ups hide behind productivity. Nobody questions a full schedule. I kept score the old man way. 2 empty hangers became 4. The suitcase stayed in the hallway. The dry cleaning tickets piled up. I tried quality time, made her favorite salmon, cued that show we both liked, even charged her e-reader. She ate standing up, watched from the kitchen, said she was beat from the offsite. When she left her plate half-finished and her smile half-formed, I told myself we were just on different shifts. I've worked long hours. I know the smell of burnout, but burnout doesn't wear new heels on a Tuesday or laugh when no one's talking. I loaded the dishwasher and stared at the window. My reflection looked like a guy waiting for a bus. The house got colder without the thermostat moving. You know that 3 a.m. Hallway, soft light, a door closing somewhere, and a refrigerator hum that sounds like a worry. That became the soundtrack. Her perfume stopped living in the bedroom. The laundry basket stopped telling our story. I found a wine glass in the sink with lipstick I didn't recognize. Same shade, different night. I tried to warm the place the way dads do. Fresh bulbs on the porch, a new porch light, oil on the squeaky hinge. The fixes made the house brighter and the shadows sharper. I kept waking up to a bed that had learned my shape too well. She'd be already gone. Messages set to do not disturb. Coffee rings on the counter like crop circles. If you've spent years building a home, you can feel when the walls stop listening. I told myself to be patient, but patience started to sound like permission. I poured the cold coffee out. I'm Jack Collins, 42, mechanic in Dearborn, Michigan. I fix what's right in front of me, rotors, belts, leaks that make a mess on the driveway. My customers are the kind of people who bring donuts and stories, and I pay my bills the slow, honest way. If you've ever lived by a torque wrench, you know the comfort of things that click when they're set right. Marriage doesn't click like that. There's no torque spec for trust. I'd finish a brake job, wipe my hands, and catch myself dialing her number just to hear it ring. Sometimes the shop radio would land on a country song about second chances. I'd turn it up and pretend I wasn't listening. The guys who know me, Mason, Old Pete, could tell I was talking less and tightening more. That's what men do when we're not sure. We tighten. The day ended, the bay door rattled down, and the quiet followed me home like a stray dog. Lauren Pierce is smart, startup smart, room tilting smart. She can talk investors into seeing a future and then build the slide deck to prove it. When we met, I loved that spark. Ambition looks beautiful when it's pointed at the same horizon. We were scrappy then. We signed a prenup because she said clarity helps love breathe. I believed her. Over time, success came with sharper edges, more events, more retreats, more people who said her name like it meant money. If you've watched someone you love rise fast, you know the pride and the distance. We went from trading daydreams to trading calendars. I'm not knocking success, I just didn't realize I'd become a layover on the way to her real life. One night she came home with a smile that didn't include me. She said she was exhausted and turned away before I could answer. I told myself not to be sensitive, but it wasn't my feelings that were thin. It was the story. We stopped talking about small things, the neighbor's new fence, the drip under the sink, the dog that wandered into the yard, tiny threads that keep a life tied together. Dinner became parallel scrolling. Weekend plans became play it by ear, which is adult code for I'll let you know if you're invited. Yeah, I'm in the garage. I'd catch myself cleaning tools that weren't dirty. At night, I'd lie still and count traffic lights changing on Michigan Avenue, green to yellow to red, like a heartbeat I couldn't fix. If you've made it past 30, you know the drift rarely announces itself. It just takes what you don't guard. I asked if we needed to reset, take a road trip, hit the lake like we used to. She said work was too crazy and smiled at a joke I didn't hear. I smelled a new shampoo. I reminded myself that seasons pass, but some seasons aren't weather. They're choices. And someone had already packed for a change. Maybe it was stress. That's what I told myself. Everyone's tired, everyone's stretched thin, and marriage isn't a highlight reel. I made room for it, handled her parents' pharmacy runs, paid the utilities early, cooked simple dinners that don't argue back. When she canceled date night with team drinks, I said, "Have fun." When she came home late with that air of victory, I asked, "How'd it go?" and swallowed the part where I wanted to ask, "Who were you with?" If you've ever put your head down and pushed through, you know the bargain. I'll carry more if it keeps us steady. But steadiness without honesty is just balance on a bad ladder. I slept on my side of the bed, phone face down, pretending that meant trust. The next morning, I found a receipt on the counter for gas to a place we don't visit. I told myself it was nothing. The brain is a great mechanic. It can tune out any rattle until it can't. Houses talk if you listen. Ours said, "Something's off." 2 wine glasses drying when I only poured 1. A suitcase that didn't bother to hide. A scent that wasn't from our bathroom. I found a sweater in the back seat of her car that I hadn't seen before. Still had a store tag. She said it was a coworker's. And I nodded like a man who appreciates teamwork. I started matching dates, late nights, retreats, girls' weekends, and the calendar dots that didn't line up with her stories. I'm not a snoop. I'm a mechanic. I diagnose patterns. The pattern here kept flashing red. Still, I held my ground. You don't fix a marriage with suspicion. You fix it with facts. That's what I told myself as I took the trash out and found another receipt. This one from a hotel by a lake we never visit in winter. I turned it over like it might tell me a better story. It didn't. Then it happened, the simplest proof in the loudest quiet. Her old tablet chimed on the kitchen counter while I was grabbing a beer. The screen lit up with a name, Dylan. Preview text, "Miss, last night already. That dress was unfair." I didn't go looking. It found me. I picked up the tablet, no passcode, a hidden account, photos in hotel mirrors, lake cabin shots, pet names that didn't belong to us, dates and receipts that matched her retreats. I waited for my heart to pound. It didn't. It flatlined, just a steady cold like stepping into winter without a coat. When the door opened later and she walked in, I didn't shout. I asked one question. She didn't deny it. She called me boring, said she was staying with Dylan, and slid a thin black folder on the table. Our prenup. If you want answers, talk to my lawyer. That was the last line of Act 1, because the next line would rewrite everything. The tablet lit up on the kitchen counter like a flare in the dark. A name I didn't recognize, Dylan, and a preview that didn't belong in my marriage. Missed last night already. That dress was unfair. For a second, I thought it was spam, one of those weird group texts. But the screen didn't lie, and the timing did. Girls' weekend, work retreat, and now this. If you're over 30, you know the kind of silence that follows a bad diagnosis. You hear everything and nothing. The refrigerator hummed. The clock clicked. My beer sweated on the counter. I told myself to put the tablet down, to take a walk, to let it go. But the truth was already in the room, pulling out a chair. I didn't feel jealous. I felt educated, like a mechanic who finally hears the knock that explains the whole engine. I wiped my hand on a dish towel, steady as I could, and turned the screen toward me. Curiosity beat caution. I tapped. People expect anger, but numb shows up first. The kind of numb you get when a doctor says, "We need to talk," and the walls lean in. I didn't pace or swear. I didn't plan revenge. I just set the beer down and watched my hands not shake. Somewhere in the house, a floorboard popped the way old ones do when the weather changes. The tablet screen idled on the lock page, bathing the counter in cold light. I thought about all the times I'd given benefit of the doubt, burnout, deadlines, team drinks, and realized doubt had been living rent-free in our kitchen. Older men will understand this. Rage wastes gas, clarity gets mileage. I counted 5 long breaths, felt my feet on the tile, and asked myself a simple question. Do you want the truth, or do you want a bedtime story? I've told enough bedtime stories to engines on their last leg. I pressed my thumb to wake the tablet. If it asked for a passcode, that would be the end. It didn't. No passcode. Just a home screen that knew me too well. The weather, the calendar, the little red numbers that say life is busy. I remembered setting this up for her years ago when we were trading playlists and passwords like love notes. Back then, it felt romantic. Right now, it felt like a key I should have returned. I slid to messages, names stacked like a guest list for a party I wasn't invited to. One thread had a different icon. No last name, just Dylan. I stared at it, the way you stare at a check engine light and hope it's a bad sensor. It wasn't. The first tap opened a room I'd never been in. I could have closed it. I could have put the tablet back and pretended the ding never happened. But if you've ever paid a mortgage, carried someone's parents to their appointments, and trusted another adult with your peace, you don't choose ignorance. You choose evidence. My thumb hovered once more, then went where the truth was waiting. It wasn't just messages. There was a whole other life tucked behind a friendly icon, a second Facebook account, same profile photo, cropped tight enough to feel honest until you notice everything outside the frame. The timeline wasn't crowded. It was curated. Photos from a lake cabin in Traverse City, recognizable wood paneling. That same beige lamp we joked about hating, except this time she was laughing like a teenager on summer break. A boathouse in the background, reflections off water, dinner pics from hotel restaurants we've never tried together. The captions were cautious, but the tags told the truth. If you're over 30, you've learned. The story is in the details, timestamps, miles, charge slips, the way sunlight hits sleeves at a certain hour. My thumb drifted through those moments like walking through a stranger's house. It didn't feel like snooping. It felt like reading the minutes from a meeting about my life that I wasn't invited to. I hit back, found the messages again, and opened the top one. The language was wrong for a marriage that still had our pictures on the mantle. My firecracker, my alpha, count the hours. The kind of lines that sound like fireworks the first time and smoke alarms the 10th. There were hotel mirrors, her dress, his watch, the kind of angles people use when they don't want to include who's holding the camera. A receipt image popped up. Gas to Traverse City on a weekend she called a wellness retreat. Another, a meal at a place I know for steaks and birthdays. Anyone our age knows the difference between a memory and an excuse. This thread was full of the second. I scrolled too far, then scrolled back, catching the rhythm. Late nights, early mornings, snippets of nothing that add up to something. I didn't screenshot. Not yet. I just read until the words stopped feeling like English and started feeling like a leak you can finally hear once the engine is quiet. I set the tablet down and stared at the wall clock. I didn't cry. There's a time for that, but it wasn't now. I sat at the kitchen table the way my dad used to sit when the bills didn't balance. Elbows in, eyes steady, count the facts. On the counter, her favorite mug, a lipstick print that wasn't from this morning. In the sink, one spoon, coffee stains clinging like a habit. On the chair back, her jacket, the one she says is for casual Fridays, still carrying a scent that doesn't live in our bathroom cabinet. Men my age will get this. Stillness can be a tool. I breathed and let the math do itself. Messages, photos, receipts, the timeline. My heart didn't race. It downshifted. Somewhere outside, a car door shut. The sound you hear 1,000 times without noticing. Tonight, I noticed everything. I folded a napkin into a square, the way guys in diners do when they're waiting on bad news, and looked back at the tablet. The story was complete enough. I knew what I had. I also knew what I needed to ask. Before the question, a flashback hit me, not the cheesy movie kind, the kind that shows up with the smell of motor oil and summer. Early days, used furniture, shared fries, a someday list written on a napkin, Lauren with her hair up, pitching me on the future like I was an investor who mattered most. We signed a prenup back then because she said clarity keeps love honest. I fix cars, I respect a good spec. We toasted to that, two people betting on each other. If you've been married a while, you know those memories don't disappear. They just go quiet until you need them for contrast. I wasn't sentimental to stall. I was remembering the baseline so I could measure the drift. The Lauren in those photos was real. The Lauren on the tablet was also real. Only one of them had room for me. I closed my eyes, counted to 5, and promised myself something older men told me once. Don't argue feelings with a liar. Argue facts or walk. I didn't lose my mind. I lost my trust. I said it out loud just to hear how it fit in the room. It fit too well. Trust is like torque. You can't see it, but you can feel when it's right. Ours had been stripped. I opened a drawer and found a pen, the cheap kind you grab at the parts store, and wrote down what I knew. Dylan's name, dates that matched receipts, cabin photos, hotel bills, messages that used language we never did. I wasn't making a case to punish her. I was making a record so I wouldn't gaslight myself later. If you're 30 plus, you've learned a memory can get blurry when people start revising history. Paper doesn't blur. I slid the pen back and looked at the thin black folder she tossed on the table a year ago with a smile. Our prenup. Back then, I didn't read it like a lawyer. Tonight, I would. The tablet dimmed, the pen mark dried, and my hands were steady. I had my sentence. Now I needed hers. The deadbolt turned. That sound landed different now. I set the tablet down, put the napkin over it like a bartender covering a tab, and practiced being calm. If you've ever worked the parts counter at 5:55 p.m., you know the discipline. Finish clean, no panic. She came in with the air of someone who's already somewhere else. Heels, tote bag, a glance at the clock like she was timing the exit. I didn't do speeches. I didn't do traps. I asked a single, ordinary question in an ordinary voice, the way you ask a service writer, did you rotate the tires? It's a gift you develop past 30. Low voice, clear point. How was the retreat? She gave me a summary that didn't require follow-ups. I nodded like a man who's changing a tire on the shoulder in the rain. No drama, just work. Then I moved the napkin. Her eyes flicked to the tablet, then to me. The room felt smaller. I had one more question, and it wasn't about work. You seeing someone? That was it. No adjectives, no $10 words, no trap in the tone. Just the sentence a man uses when he respects himself enough to want the truth. She blinked once, then did what people do when they're still deciding whether to lie. Time stretched. Clock tick. Refrigerator hum. The world holding its breath. Then came the shrug, the bored look, the line about me being boring, and the announcement I'd hear again. She was staying with Dylan. A thin black folder hit the table, our prenup, landing like a dare. If you want answers, talk to my lawyer. Older men will know. Sometimes the hardest part is over in 5 words. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I let the words settle, the way dust settles after a hard stop. Act 2 had found its edge. The next move wouldn't be shouting or guessing. It would be reading every line, especially the one that only matters if someone cheats. And that line was waiting where she told me to look. She didn't pace or cry. She leaned on the counter, met my eyes, and said it like a weather report. "You're boring now, Jack." I waited for the punchline that didn't come. If you're past 30, you know that sting. When someone reduces years to a sentence. I asked the only thing that made sense. "That easy?" She shrugged like a waitress clearing plates. A suitcase sat by the door I hadn't noticed, wheels angled toward the exit. The house felt like it had packed, too. I thought about the weekends we used to spend fixing the porch light, racing the rain, laughing at bad TV. She looked through me, not at me, like I was the guy reading meters. I tasted metal in my mouth and counted to 5. My dad taught me that. Count first, talk second. "You're bored," I said. "That's fixable." She shook her head. "Not by you." The room said more than we did. Something simple had ended. Something complicated was starting. It wasn't just packed. It was ready. Handle up, zipper aligned, a little tag tucked under like a secret. That told me 2 things. This wasn't a mood, and I wasn't invited. I put my palm on the suitcase and felt the weight of decisions I didn't get to vote on. "How long have you known?" I asked. "Long enough to be done," she said. If you've ever watched someone leave while the coffee's still warm, you know that floating feeling. Your feet are on the floor, but nothing's holding. I took the handle down and set the suitcase upright, a small act to keep my hands busy. "We could talk," I offered, voice low as if volume could change facts. She checked her phone like the time mattered more than the moment. "I'm staying with Dylan," she said, light as weather, "until the divorce." That word landed hard, not a threat, a plan. I looked at the front door and heard the porch boards creak, like even they knew. "I'm staying with Dylan until the divorce." She said it the way people say, "I'll be back Sunday." No shame, no apology, just logistics. I thought about the lake cabin photos, the hotel mirrors, the way she laughed in those messages, younger and lighter, like I'd been the extra weight. Older men will understand. There's a moment you either reach for pride or you reach for begging. Pride is quieter. "Is that what you want?" I asked. She rolled her eyes. "It's what makes sense." Sense. That word works hard for adults who don't want to say desire. The suitcase edged closer to the door in my mind. I pictured myself checking her name off mail, changing the Wi-Fi, learning how to cook for one without feeling pathetic. "Then say it plain," I said, steady. She did. "I want out." The room didn't argue. The refrigerator hummed like it had already adjusted. I stepped back from the suitcase and let the air settle. If this was a goodbye, it wasn't mine to deliver. I kept my voice in the lane I use at the shop when a lug nut won't budge. Steady, patient, no stripped threads. "Okay," I said. "Then let's be clear." Clarity had been her favorite word. I could taste the irony. She folded her arms, posture of a person who's already moved into the next chapter. "There's nothing to discuss," she said. "There's a lot to divide. Past 30, you learn that panic writes bad checks." I reached for the chair, sat, and let my breathing set the pace. "You're angry," she added, as if labeling me made the facts softer. "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm awake." She smirked, the kind of smile you give a traffic cop when you know your tags are clean. The old me would have filled the air with promises and questions. The older me let the silence work. I wanted one thing, the truth without decorations. "If you're leaving," I said, "leave clean." She glanced at the suitcase again and smoothed the handle. Clean wasn't on the agenda. "You're just a mechanic." That's how she framed the next decade of my life. 4 words meant to put me back in the box she'd outgrown. I almost laughed. "Just" is a funny word when your brakes work and your lights don't flicker. I thought about the bills I'd paid, the meds I'd picked up for her parents, the nights I kept the house together while she chased team drinks and offsites. If you've ever carried someone else's piece without asking for credit, you know how fast a sentence like that can shrink you, if you let it. I didn't. "I build things that last," I said. "That's never been just to me." She looked past me, already somewhere else, and the distance in that glance said more than the insult. The temptation was to argue value. I didn't. Older men will tell you, the more you explain, the less they hear. I nodded once, like a foreman closing a work order, and saved my words for the page that would matter. In my head, I saw our ledger. Not the kind with dollars, though those were there, but the running list most long marriages keep without writing it down. Mortgage payments I sent on time. The water heater I replaced. Her parents' prescriptions I picked up in snow. The vacations I postponed for her pitch weeks. All of it done with an assumption. We were a team. Teams don't keep score to win. They keep score to stay honest. You didn't build this life alone, I said, not loud, not bitter, just accurate. She shrugged the way people do when accuracy is inconvenient. You wanted stability, she answered. I wanted more. Maybe that's the most honest thing she said all night. It hurt because it fit. I thought about the guys at the shop, the ones who come in with hands nicked from weekend projects. They know you can't tighten a bolt that's already stripped. You replace it or you walk. I looked at the table where her hand rested. Mine didn't reach for it. She reached into her tote and pulled out a thin black folder like it was a takeout menu. We don't have to drag this out, she said, sliding it across the table. Our prenup, her idea years ago, signed when we were sharing fries and futures. Back then, it felt like two grown-ups being smart. Tonight, it felt like a line she'd planned to stand behind. She tapped the cover with a manicured finger, a little smile that said the math favored her. This will keep it clean, she added. Clean again. I placed my hand on the folder and felt the weight of paper that decides who keeps what and why. Older folks know, documents don't love you, but they do remember for you. You kept this handy, I said. I like to be prepared. She said it like a brag. I slid the folder closer. If she wanted clarity, she'd get it. Not with tears, with words she once believed in, enough to sign. Go ahead, she said, that cool grin returning. We'll see who walks out with what. Sounded rehearsed, like she'd practiced in the mirror, tried different tones, picked this one because it felt powerful. I opened the cover and saw our names, the date, the lawyer stamps that make things official. Her confidence filled the room like perfume, strong at first, then heavy. If you want answers, she added, talk to my lawyer. The line from the hook landed again, sharper now that I understood the script. I thought about the envelope I could build, dates, receipts, photos, the truth stacked on truth. This wasn't about catching her. I'd already done that. It was about not letting myself get erased. I traced the table's edge with my thumb and looked up. You sure? I asked. Positive. She said it too fast. That's the tell. People who are sure don't rush the word. I turned the first page and started reading, like a mechanic reads a service bulletin. Slow, exact, hunting for the line that changes everything. I read, not like a husband at midnight, but like a man who will live with whatever the next sentence says. Definitions, disclosures, assets before, assets during, percentages the way accountants split hairs. It was written in tidy legal lines, the kind that pretend to be neutral until you live under them. I remembered sitting in that office years ago, her hand warm in mine, both of us nodding at clarity, like it was romance. Back then, I trusted the idea because I trusted her. Tonight, I trusted the ink. If you're over 30, you've learned that paper beats memory in a fair fight. I slid my finger down paragraphs, circled in my head what mattered, dates, conduct, triggers that turn words into action. Every so often, I'd glance up to find her watching me watch our future. The house was so quiet, I could hear the tick in the wall clock skip a beat. Then the headings changed. Conduct of the parties during marriage. My breathing did too. There it was, tucked where people stop paying attention, written in polite ink that doesn't raise its voice. Clause 14. I read it once, then again, slower. If either party engages in an extramarital relationship while still legally married, the non-offending party is entitled to 50% ownership of any business assets gained during the marriage. Simple. Specific. Signed. My eyes stayed on the number, not because of greed, but because of math that finally respected my side of the ledger. I didn't look up. I let the words settle into the room like a new foundation. She shifted in her chair, the first movement that wasn't casual. Find what you were looking for? She asked, trying to sound bored. I closed the folder gently, the way you close a hood when you know the engine's about to start. Yeah, I said. I did. That was the cliff's edge. The next step wouldn't be a shout. It would be directions, simple ones. She said to talk to her lawyer. I planned to keep it that simple. Clause 14 wasn't loud. It was a quiet sentence with big teeth. I read it twice, then a third time, the way you read a bill that doesn't seem real. Extramarital relationship equals 50% of business assets gained during the marriage. Simple math, signed by both of us back when clarity was our favorite word. I didn't feel greedy. I felt seen. Older folks will understand. Sometimes life only respects what's written down. I closed the folder and looked around our kitchen like it had been holding its breath. I heard my dad's voice from years ago. Measure twice, cut once. This wasn't about cutting her down. It was about measuring the truth. I didn't plan speeches or threats. I planned steps. She told me to talk to her lawyer. Fine, I would. The climax wasn't a shout. It was the sound of the chair legs scraping back while I stood up with a plan. I didn't laugh because it was funny. I laughed because the symmetry was unbelievable. She wrote her own trap. Not because she expected to cheat, but because she expected me too. That's the part that landed. She protected her success from the man who paid the mortgage and picked up her parents' medicine. If you're over 30, you've seen that kind of insurance before. Trust with a seatbelt. I poured the rest of the cold coffee into the sink and watched it swirl like a bad idea going down the drain. My hands didn't shake. The laugh came out low and quick, the way a man laughs when he finally understands the rules of a game he didn't know he was playing. This wouldn't be a brawl in the driveway. It would be a calendar entry and a clean table. She wanted lawyers in the room. I'd bring one. Hers. The climax was simple. I picked up my phone, I typed Elliot Graves, Detroit divorce attorney, and there he was. Clean website, sharp copy, the kind of headshot that says, "I win before lunch." The testimonials read like victory laps. Fine. I called the office using a name that wasn't mine, not to be sneaky but to avoid noise. I asked for a consultation about a complicated prenup. The assistant loved that phrase. We set it for Thursday, 9 a.m., at a diner off Michigan Avenue because Elliot likes neutral ground. So do I. Neutral ground is where men sit across from truth with coffee between them. I added the appointment to my calendar, then texted Mason, "Need a favor, cover the shop Thursday morning." He replied with a thumbs up and a prayer hands emoji, which, at our age, means, say less, I'm there. I closed out the lights, checked the door, and put the folder in a brown envelope. The climax? A tidy to-do list. Sleep. Show up. Let paper do the talking. I chose the diner on purpose. Chrome edges, cracked red booths, black coffee that tastes like third shift. Places like that make everyone the same height. No marble lobby, no receptionist with a clipboard, no framed degrees leaning over your shoulder. Just the smell of bacon and the hiss from a flat top. Men my age know. A booth can be a courtroom without the echo. I got there early, sat with my back to the wall, and let the room settle me. The waitress called me hun and topped me off. I put the envelope on the table and kept my hands flat, the way I do when I'm explaining a repair to a customer who's worried about cost. This wasn't a performance. It was a service bulletin. When the door chimed and a tailored coat moved through the light, I didn't stand. I didn't wave. I watched. The climax walked in on expensive soles and checked his watch before he checked my face. Elliot slid into the booth across from me. No tie, heavy watch, phone down on the formica like it belonged there. He smiled the way people smile when they assume they're already ahead. "You must be Alan," he said. "No," I answered, calm as a torque wrench. "Name's Jack." He blinked, recalculating, eyes moving from my face to the envelope and back. Older adults know that moment. When a person realizes the story they're in isn't the one they rehearsed. He tried to reset with charm. "Jack, how can I help?" I pushed the coffee aside an inch to make room. "You don't help me," I said. "You represent my wife." The words landed. His hand stopped halfway to his phone. I didn't add drama. I added evidence. The climax was a slide, not a slam. I moved the envelope into the exact center of the table. No speech, no threats, just paper. I tapped the top of the envelope once, a mechanic's signal. "Start here." Inside, I said, is a copy of our prenup with one clause highlighted and documentation of a timeline that makes it relevant. He didn't open it right away. He studied my face like people do when they're searching for weakness. Men over 30 recognize that look. It's not personal, it's professional. I held steady. "Coffee?" the waitress asked. "Please," he said without looking away. Then he slid a finger under the flap and pulled out the stack. Prenup on top, clause 14 glowing in yellow. Behind it, the screenshots, the receipts, the lake cabin photos, the dates that line up like mile markers. He read the highlighted line once, then again. The room got small. The climax was the pause, the kind that tells you a man just found the wire under the floor. He went methodical, which I respected. Names, dates, miles on the receipts, timestamps on the photos. The Traverse City weekend, The hotel mirrors, the language from those messages that doesn't belong in a house with shared keys. He asked a lawyer's question without looking up. Have these been altered? I answered like a man who rebuilds transmissions. No, and I can verify every charge from our joint card. He hit a page and held it longer than the rest. My summary of the timeline beside Clause 14, like two puzzle pieces that only fit one way. If you've lived a little, you know when the ground shifts. You feel it in your chest first. His jaw moved like he was chewing a difficult truth. He set the papers down, then picked them up again, because putting them down didn't fix anything. The climax landed soft but sure. He finally met my eyes. This changes everything. He didn't sell it or soften it. He just said it. A professional naming a fact. That's the thing about paper. It doesn't care who smiles. He asked where I got the prenup. From her, I said. She keeps it handy. His mouth pressed flat at that. I don't know if it was judgment or sympathy, and I didn't need either. You understand, he started, that if this is accurate. I nodded. I do. He exhaled slowly, the way a man does when he's admitting the next mile won't be paved. I can't represent her in good faith without addressing this clause. Addressing is lawyer for we're not where we thought we were. He stacked the pages, squared them on the table, and pushed them back into the envelope like it might quiet the noise. It didn't. The climax wasn't loud, it was final. His smile didn't come back. I didn't gloat. Older men know there's no dignity in victory laps at a diner. I took the envelope, tucked it away, and slid a 5 under the coffee cup for the refill I barely touched. You'll let her know, I said. He nodded, eyes on the table. I'll have to. I stood up slowly, joints popping the way they do when you've been in a booth too long. The door chimed, the cold air met me, and Michigan Avenue sounded like every Thursday morning. Delivery trucks, a bus brake squeal, life moving. I didn't feel lighter. I felt aligned. You don't beat someone by yelling. You let the truth stand on its own legs. I walked past the window and saw him still there, staring at a spot on the Formica like it might offer a better clause. The climax was a quiet one. I didn't look back again. I took 3 things: the envelope, my breath, and a sentence I planned to remember. Sometimes you don't fight. You just read the fine print. That's not cowardice. That's adulthood with receipts. Back at the shop, the bay door rattled up, and the smell of oil and rubber greeted me like old friends who don't ask questions. Mason raised an eyebrow. I nodded once. That was enough. I put the envelope in the safe and wiped my hands, a ritual that calms men who fix things for a living. This wasn't over. Courtrooms, emails, boardrooms, those were coming. But the pivot had happened. She told me to talk to her lawyer. I did. And the lawyer read the line she forgot would ever apply to her. The climax wasn't the verdict. It was the decision I'd already made. Let consequences work the night shift. The phone lit up while I was elbow deep in a transmission. Unknown number. I wiped my hands, answered, and got steam in my ear. What did you say to him? Lauren snapped, each word sharp enough to cut wire. Older men know that tone. It isn't curiosity. It's damage control. I stepped outside the bay, sun on my face, oil on my knuckles. Good morning to you too, I said. She didn't laugh. What did you tell Elliot? I didn't raise my voice. I told him the truth. Silence. Not the thoughtful kind. The kind where a person counts how much ground they just lost. You're manipulating the system, she said. No, I answered. I'm reading what you wrote and living with it. A delivery truck hissed by, and for a second all I heard was air brakes and a heartbeat that wasn't mine. This isn't over, she said. It's not even started, I said back. The climax was simple. She hung up first. By lunch, Oise, Elliot's office called. Polite voice, careful words. Mr. Collins, after reviewing new information, Mr. Graves must withdraw from representation. No drama, just the legal equivalent of setting a tool down and backing away. I pictured Elliot at that diner booth, Clause 14 still burning a hole in his briefcase. Understood, I said. Adults our age know how to read between lines. He wasn't picking a side. He was escaping a fire. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Lauren. He dropped me without warning, she said like she was reporting a crime. Then find another, I said, but make sure they read every line. She started a speech about unfairness, about how I'd twisted things. "Lauren," I said, "you don't twist a wrench by reading the spec." She hung up again, faster this time. I went back to the Ford, tightened the last bolt, and felt the calm you get when something clicks to torque. The climax landed with a metallic certainty. Dylan didn't call me, obviously, but I still heard from him, through his absence. The texts that used to buzz at all hours went quiet on her end. Mason's wife works in the same building as Lauren. She heard the whisper before the email. "The boyfriend's gone cold." Older adults know what that means. When the fun costs money, fun leaves early. Lauren tried to sound casual in a stray text. "This is getting messy. Can we just talk?" I didn't answer right away. I let the message sit like a check engine light you already scanned. A day later, she tried again. "We don't have to blow everything up." It was the "we" that told me he'd already stepped back. Ghosting isn't magic, it's math. He did the calculation and didn't like the total. At the shop, I put a fresh filter in a Civic and thought about how disappearing acts look brave only to the person running. The climax was quiet. She stopped saying his name. Rumors in companies spread like oil on water, fast, thin, everywhere. First, it was personal issues, then prenup complications. By Thursday, it was prenup scandal. Someone forwarded me a public thread I wasn't supposed to see. Investors asking stability questions. Employees wondering, what's next? I didn't gloat. Men my age know the difference between justice and theater. This was justice doing the boring work. Papers, meetings, reputations adjusting to facts. Lauren called late, voice lower now. "People are talking," she said. "They'd stop faster if you stopped." "I didn't start them," I answered. "Clause 14 did." She sighed, the kind of sigh you give a bill you wish would pay itself. "You're enjoying this," she accused. "I'm rebuilding my peace," I said. The refrain in my head was a mechanic's prayer. Truth will hold. Bolts will settle. The climax came in an HR memo I never read, because I didn't have to. The story had moved to conference rooms. Then came the official language. In light of recent developments, the board is requesting that Ms. Pierce step down as CEO on an interim basis. That's corporate for hand us the keys. The email hit the press wire and my phone lit up with guys from the shop sending screenshots like we were passing around a fish story. I texted back a thumbs up and put the phone down. Older adults understand the moment when a title stops protecting you. It felt strange feeling sorry and not sorry at the same time. We built a life together. She built the company. Choices built the rest. That afternoon, I changed a timing belt and thought about how leadership looks a lot like maintenance. You can skip it for a while, but not forever. Lauren didn't call. Maybe she couldn't find the words. Maybe the words found her first. The climax wasn't loud. It was the board picking continuity over charisma. You can tell when someone's selling a place they love. The listing photos flatter corners that never mattered, and the price whispers urgency. Her downtown loft hit the market on a Tuesday. High ceilings, exposed brick, a view of the river you only notice at sunset. A week later, I heard she'd closed. Fast. Not a flex. A patch. Then someone said she'd moved into a small condo near the airport. Cracked parking lot, community pool with a faded no lifeguard sign. A short drive to everywhere you don't want to be. I didn't drive by. Adults my age know there's nothing helpful about rubbernecking. I swept the shop floor, tossed the used filters, and paid the parts bill early. It felt like sweeping my own head. She texted once, "Can we talk?" And I answered with the calm my dad taught me, "Email my lawyer." The climax was dull but honest. Downgrades don't make noise. They stack. Court days aren't cinematic. You sit, you wait, you answer questions in a voice that could read a grocery list. I wore a clean shirt. I brought the envelope. My lawyer did the speaking. Clause 14 did the heavy lifting. We laid out the timeline like mile markers. Messages, photos, receipts, dates. No speeches about feelings. Just the torque spec. The judge read, asked 3 questions, and read again. Older men know you don't celebrate in a courthouse. You breathe. When the ruling came, it fit like a part that finally arrived. I was granted half her shares earned during the marriage. Not a windfall, a ledger settling. I nodded once, thanked my lawyer, and walked out into air that smelled like rain. I didn't text anyone. I didn't post. I sat in my truck and let my shoulders drop for the first time in months. The climax wasn't the gavel. It was the quiet after. A week later, I sent an email to her new counsel, short, clear, civil. I'm open to a buyout of my stake at full market value plus 10% for the insult. That last line wasn't spite. It was punctuation on a long sentence. My lawyer vetted the number. We hit send. Men over 30 know the power of a clean note. No adjectives. All math. I went back to work, changed a set of pads, and listened to the shop radio run through classic rock like it was clearing a decade. Around closing, I checked my inbox. Nothing. In my head, I pictured a conference call where words like optics and timing pretended to solve what Clause 14 had already solved. I locked up, flipped the sign, and let the parking lot quiet wash over me. The climax lived in the outbox. I'd made my move. The board had their options. Silence used to drive me crazy. Now it told the truth. Days passed. No reply. My lawyer followed up, polite and firm. Still nothing. I imagined the math on their side. Cash flow, investors, the cost of buying peace when peace has a price tag. Sometimes the smartest play is to say nothing while you rearrange chairs. Fine. I rearranged mine too. I hired a management firm to oversee my shares, so I didn't have to turn boardrooms into a second job. Older adults will understand. There's relief in paying professionals to keep the noise down. I started sleeping through the night again. No 3 a.m., refrigerator hymns, no phantom footsteps. I woke up early one morning and realized the house felt like a house again. Coffee tasted like coffee. The climax was modest. A calendar ping from the management firm. First dividend schedule attached. Consequences don't roar. They click. A direct deposit here. A meeting rescheduled there. A headline that moves on while the ledger stays put. One afternoon, I was torquing lug nuts on a cherry red Ram I'd finally treated myself to when my phone buzzed. A short email from her counsel, all hedges and maybes. No offer, just monitoring the situation. I smiled without teeth and slid the socket back onto the rail. If you've lived long enough, you know how this music plays. People call it fate, karma, justice. I call it a receipt. Lauren didn't reach out again. Pride, shame, strategy, pick a reason. I didn't need one. I checked the porch light I'd installed months back. It clicked on at dusk, steady and sure. That's what this phase felt like. Small things working, big things no longer breaking. The climax was my own voice, steady in my head. No reply is still a reply. Let the quiet finish what the clause started. Rebuilding didn't start with speeches. It started with bolts. I fixed the tow truck that had been limping for months. New transmission mount, fresh fluid, a rattle that finally shut up. I repainted the shop sign a clean white, hand-lettered Collins Auto, the way my dad would have. Steady strokes, no rush. Older folks know this truth. Peace hides in small completions. I tossed junk I'd kept just in case, labeled bins that never had labels, and put a new mat by the office door so customers didn't track in the grit. My phone stayed face down, not as a test, just a habit I didn't need anymore. A neighbor wandered over with 2 coffees and a story about his lawnmower. I fixed it while he talked about grandkids and the Tigers. When the engine caught, he grinned like we'd won something. Maybe we had. The climax was quiet but solid. I locked the bay at dusk, and for the first time in months, the shop didn't echo back at me. I bought the truck I had circled in catalogs for years, a cherry red Ram with the tow package that laughs at hills. I didn't buy it to show off. I bought it because I could finally hear what I wanted without her voice in my head. My nephew climbed in, sneakers on the seat, questions flying. Can we take it to the lake? We packed a cooler like my brother used to, PB&Js, chips, the soda you're not supposed to drink, and drove out before the sun finished waking. On the water, he talked fishing. I talked patience and knots. Men over 30 know that teaching a kid to cast is teaching him to breathe. He got a bite. Then 2, then lost one, and I let him tell the story bigger than it was. On the way home, he fell asleep with the window cracked and the wind doing that soft whistle. The climax was a small prayer I didn't say out loud. Thank you for an ordinary day. Peace tastes different when you've earned it. It's the first sip of coffee you make for yourself because you want it, not because you're bracing for news. It's eggs that don't go cold while you wait for a text. It's the Saturday morning where you don't fill the silence with chores because the silence isn't a problem anymore. I took my time with simple things, sweeping sawdust, checking tire pressures, replacing a porch bulb that burned out months ago. An older customer, Pete, told me about losing his wife 10 years back and learning to cook for one. "You'll figure your plate out," he said. He wasn't wrong. I grilled a steak that would have overcooked while I argued once. Tonight, it hit the plate at medium right now. I sat on the porch, let the evening settle, and realized the porch light was doing exactly what it should, coming on at dusk. No drama. The climax was just a sentence in my head. I don't need to look at my phone. Days found their rhythm. The management firm handled emails about shares and meetings I didn't want. "No, mates, I stayed." Direct deposits hummed in quietly. I tuned a V8 by ear, something younger guys think is a magic trick, and Mason laughed when I nailed it first try. I started walking the neighborhood after dinner, no destination, just steps, and waved at the widow 3 doors down who always waters at dusk. She told me about her roses. I told her about my nephew's fish that got away. If you're in your 50s, you know that small talk is a kind of glue. I drove out to the cemetery, said a few words to my dad about Clause 14 and keeping your side of the street clean. "You'd have liked the red truck," I said. The wind agreed. Back home, I tossed an old box of someday projects and kept the one that still mattered, building a workbench that won't wobble. The climax clicked like a level bubble. Life felt level. Friday morning, I went to the coffee spot near the shop, the one with the mismatched mugs and the owner who plays Sinatra like he means it. I took my corner table, the one that doesn't demand conversation. The bell over the door rang, and there she was. Lauren, hair tied back, blazer creased like it had been folded wrong, eyes doing that tired scan for an easier exit than the truth. I didn't jump. I didn't hide. I took a breath and felt my feet on the floor, the way my therapist cousin told me to, back when I still took advice like vitamins. She saw me and hesitated, that split second where pride checks the clock. She picked up her cup and walked over. Older men know that moment. 2 histories in one small space, both of them heavier than the table they're sitting at. She set the cup down without asking if she could sit. The climax was simple. I nodded and she sat. "Do you think about us?" she asked, eyes on the lid, thumb rolling the seam like it might give her a better answer. Older adults recognize that question. It isn't about nostalgia. It's about permission to rewrite. "Sure," I said. "And I'm glad it's over." No theatrics, just the truth that finally fit my mouth. She nodded like she'd expected a softer landing and didn't get it. "You look good," she tried. "Yeah," I said. "I sleep fine now." That one landed. She wasn't sick. She was worn down like a belt that squeals when cold. She mentioned work, the condo near the airport, how the pools closed for repairs like that mattered. I didn't ask about Dylan. She didn't offer. We let the small talk run out the way a song fades when the DJ's not paying attention. The climax was the moment we both understood there wasn't a bridge back, just 2 exits, clearly marked. I stood not to rush her, just to stand. "Take care," I said, the way you say it when you mean it, and when you don't owe more. She looked like she might reach for an apology, and then realized apologies are currency after the store closes. "You too," she said. I tossed my cup, held the door because that's how I was raised, and stepped into air that felt cleaner than it had in a year. The sun found a gap between buildings and threw a strip of warm across the sidewalk. My shoulder let go of a knot I didn't know was holding. I didn't look back through the glass to see if she watched me go. The light told me everything I needed. Men my age will understand. Some doors close without a slam. They click, and the click is enough. The climax was a breath that went all the way down and came back easy. I walked to the truck with the kind of calm you only get after you finish the hard job right. No leftover bolts, no extra parts, no mystery rattles. I turned the key and let the engine settle into that confident idle. The coffee shop window reflected a man who looks like he knows his lane. I sent my nephew a text, "Lake this weekend?" And he replied with 2 many fish emojis. Good. I drove past the turn that would have taken me by her office and took the long way instead, windows down, radio low. Michigan Avenue gave me green lights like it was rooting for me. Back at the shop, a customer waved me down with a rattle in the front end. "Got time?" he asked. "I do," I said, and meant it. The climax was the simplest sentence I've ever believed. I'm okay. And okay felt like the life I'd been building while I wasn't looking. She once had everything, money, power, and me. She lost all 3, and not because I shouted, because I read the line she wrote and lived by it. "Talk to my lawyer," she said. So I did. A diner, a plain envelope, clause 14 in quiet ink. Those weren't fireworks. They were instructions. Actions have consequences. That's not revenge. That's gravity. I rebuilt slowly. Bolts first, then mornings, then sleep. The porch light clicks on at dusk. The red truck starts on the first turn. The house sounds like a house again. I don't check my phone to know what kind of day I'm having. Peace isn't loud, but it lasts. And when I ran into her at the coffee shop, I didn't feel taller or smaller. I felt level. She asked if I think about us. I do. I'm glad it's over. If you're listening for a lesson, here it is. Protect your side of the street, write things down, and keep your voice low. Peace is the best kind of revenge. If you were in my shoes, would you forgive or let karma do its job?